Hi, I'm Chef Dave Palmer. Welcome to my home. Today, we're making homemade pizza. We're going to start with some water at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Add 2 packs of yeast. Now remember that I am making 2 large pizzas, so if you are only serving a smaller amount of people, you can make 1 large pizza on a half-sheet pan, or you can make 2 round pizzas, about a medium, probably 12 to 14 inches. Stir in your yeast to dissolve. We're going to add just a little bit of sugar. This is organic white cane sugar. And you want to wake up that yeast, give it a little something to feed on. That's probably a teaspoon. And then I put a little bit of flour in there also to get the process started. When you start to see some little bubbles coming to the surface, you know that you're all set and ready to go. So my next method is probably a little bit unorthodox, but that's okay because it's my pizza, right? I know you're supposed to spoon flour, and if you sift it, so on and so forth. I pour it right into the sifter. This is an old sifter I've had for a long time. Don't worry if you spill a little bit around. And this happens to be a 1.5 cup sifter. So it's 1 cup to here, and then another ½ cup to the top. And I just sift it right in there. Now, can you just dump the flour in there? You certainly can. But I find that I get really consistent results, and it always comes out right when I do this. So you want to put in half of your flour. I'm making a double batch, so I'm going to need 3 cups of flour. And then stir away. Now, if you were stirring by hand with a wooden spoon, you'd just be stirring away. I love the dough hook. It is my favorite little kitchen gadget. These KitchenAid mixers are amazing, so if you don't have a stand mixer, invest in one if you do any baking really at all, because they're so worth it. You can see we don't have a dough ball yet, and that's because there's only half the flour in there. Next we want to add some olive oil. You want to add about 2 tablespoons per batch. And then we're going to add some more of this organic white sugar. You can omit the sugar, but I find that the texture definitely is better if you have the sugar. It feeds the yeast and makes the yeast really get active. So that's a couple tablespoons, and you can adjust it to your taste, but you'll miss the taste of that sugar. It's not that much, and the yeast feeds on it, so it breaks a lot of it down. Some more of our flour. Again, this is about 1.5 cup that I'm adding at a time here. And don't worry about this extra here. I'm going to use that later. We're also going to add some garlic salt. About a teaspoon if you're doing 1, or 2 teaspoons if you're doing 2. somewhere in the neighborhood of a tablespoon or so of oregano, tablespoon or so of basil, now we have 75% of the flour in the recipe in the bowl here. And here's where it starts to get messy if you're going too fast, so keep it slow until you start to form a dough ball. It's starting to come together a little bit, but it's still not there. We need one more sifter of flour, or 1.5 more cups. And I find that using a dough hook, you don't have to be quite as accurate with your measurements because it will pick up what flour it can kind of on its own. Trying to get it to form a nice ball of dough. And then we will need it a little bit, but the dough hook does a lot of the work for us. And again, slow, slow, slow. You can speed it up a little bit once it actually forms a ball, and you won't fling flour everywhere. Believe me, I've done that a bunch of times. I just locked the stand mixer down so it won't pop up on me. And we're starting to get a dough ball here. And I'm going to turn it up and really let it thwack against the side. You'll start to see all of the dough residue start to come off the sides and stick to the middle dough ball. Basically, you're kneading the dough using the machine. When you see that it's no longer sticking to the sides, you let it go for just a little bit longer, and then it's time to take it out. And that's where this comes in. I'm gonna get my hands floured. I'm just gonna take it right off the hook. Still got a little bit of stick to it, and that's okay because we're about to plop it out here onto the floured surface. Now, there's very little residue on the sides of the bowl. That's exactly what you want. So when you knead the dough, I like to pound it out a little bit like this, and fold in a side, and then fold in a side, and fold in another side, in a sort of circular pattern, and it'll turn it into more of a square type shape, and then you just fold in each little corner, punch it in, and you see I've got the flour here below it. It's just picking up only what flour that it needs to pick up because the sticky part will be on the bottom as you push it through. And don't be shy, put a little muscle into it. We want to have a nice elastic dough. If it's not elastic, it will not have the texture that you desire. It also will not hold together when you're trying to stretch it for the dough portion of laying out your pizza. Alright, starting to look good. It's holding its shape. It's not cracking. That tells me it's not too dry. It's not sticky. You can see it's not sticking on my hands at all. Alright, here's a little trick. If you don't want to have to use another bowl, put yourself some olive oil in the mixer bowl. Drop it in there. Swirl it around like this to coat the bowl and the ball with oil. See how I'm just tossing it around in there? It's getting a nice coating. Alright, and that's good. Cover it with a little plastic wrap, and we're going to put it in the oven at 100 degrees. That's the proofing temperature that I We're gonna put it in there for 45 minutes and we're gonna check it out. Misfits Market is where I get all of my organic produce and a lot of pantry items like this King Arthur flour. They deliver directly to my door and they even give me a discount, which is amazing. So check them out. They offer different kinds of things, a lot of variety, and they are a great resource for anybody who wants to cook at home. Just in case you want a discount, go to chefdavepalmer.com/misfits. So our dough has risen to actually more than double. So you have a choice. You can use it just like this and it will be fine. But if you punch it down and let it rise just for another 15 minutes or so, it will be a better texture. So if you have time, do it. Trust me. And when I say punch it down, I literally mean just punch some of the air out of it, just like this. You don't have to try to get it all out. The subsequent rising here will take much less time than the first time. All you gotta do, cover it back up, stick it back in your oven. Alright, we have risen a second time. Now keep in mind that I am making a double batch. And I'm going to divide my dough in half. I'm making a large Sicilian style crust this time. You can do it a couple of ways. I usually spread a little bit of cornmeal. This is just plain yellow cornmeal. And that keeps it from sticking too badly. But it also keeps you from having to use oil in your pan, which is not in itself all that bad, but the dough will stick in place a little bit better and hold its form a little bit better when you use cornmeal instead. So you see, I'm just stretching the dough. Try not to tear holes in it like I just almost did here. And if you do tear holes, just kind of patch it up. It's no big deal. Get it to roughly the shape that you want it to be in, and then kind of press it into the pan. Use your hands to kind of support it, just peel it, and then give it a good stretch until you get it to the shape that you want. You can also go free form. You can put it on a pizza stone. There are lots of different ways to go about this. I have some screens, some pizza screens that are great if you're making a round pizza, and they get a nice crispiness on the bottom of the crust. So lots of methods. This is just one of them. We've got our crust the shape that we want it to be, and now we're going to sauce it. And I'm using strained tomatoes. I know you can make your own sauce, you can buy a jarred sauce, so on and so forth, but these are organic, fresh tomatoes. They're imported from Italy, and they come from Misfits Market. Just drizzle it on kind of evenly. Don't go too heavy in any one spot. I used this last week, and it turned out so great. And it just so happens also that this 7-ounce container is the perfect amount for a large Sicilian style pizza. And before we put in our cheese, I like to do this. Let's get some green in there. This is baby spinach. It's all organic. It comes from Misfits Market, of course. I like to go kind of heavy. My kids really like this, and it's a great way to get them to eat some greens. Kids don't always like salad, so putting it on a pizza seems to be a great way to get it in their diets. And it tastes great. I love spinach. You can top it with your cheese. Next, I'm going to put on some nice sweet bell peppers. These are orange and red. Organic, of course. Really pile it on because there's no reason not to. I'm gonna put on some onions. Now I have one picky eater who doesn't particularly love onions, so I'm gonna put onions only on half. He knows who he is. And then beautiful cremini or baby bella mushrooms. Alright, put it in our oven for 25, bake it up. I'm going to show you a sauceless pizza. So there's no sauce under here, it's just spinach and then a nice thin layer of thinly sliced Roma tomatoes. Then with a little bit of herbs on the top, and then choose your pizza. One thing to note, if you're using fresh tomatoes like I am here, it's better not to put a massive amount of cheese to totally cover them up because there's a lot of water content in there and you want them to release some of that water content and not make your pizza soggy. I'm going to top this one with some pepperonis. And our first pizza is about done, so this one will go in right behind it. I do like to only cook one pizza at a time. I get a better result. It seems that they don't cook as fast when they're in there together because it's a lot of volume in the oven. So if you're working with a home oven, typically one pizza at a time is the best way to go. Comes out. It goes in, hot out of the oven. Butter your crust. Just brush a little butter on there. What it does is it tenderizes the crust, so it gives it a nice buttery taste, but it also makes your crust tender instead of crusty, if you will. On a big thick crust like this, I think it's nice to have the more tender touch to that crust. But you gotta do it right when it comes out of the oven. And then it's time to serve it up. As you can see, it's pretty easy to make your own homemade pizza right at home with healthy, organic ingredients from Misfits Market. I'm Chef Dave Palmer. Thanks for joining me in my home. Be happy, healthy, and kind.